Okay, I think we'll begin. Good evening and a warm welcome to all members of the Radley community to this Radley for Life event on Zoom. My name is Caroline Monaghan and I manage the Radleian Society based here at Radley College. Our event this evening is focused on the topic of entrepreneurism, and we've lined up a fantastic panel of entrepreneurs from Radley who have either started their own businesses or are currently working in a startup. Now, this event was due to be held in person in London, but we've moved it onto Zoom to enable as many people to join as possible. We still plan to hold an in-person event in London in April this year, when we hope it will be easier to gather together. And we'll continue to focus the conversation on entrepreneurism at that event, but also make sure there's some really good chance to network with each other and chat face to face, which we could all do with a little bit more of. Now, we're holding these events because we've seen a massive increase in the last few years in Radleians starting their own businesses. And we want to help to harness this entrepreneurial spirit within the Radley community and help to share knowledge amongst you all. But we also, most importantly, want to use these events to inspire currently Radley boys to look more broadly at what they might do once they leave Radley. And we've got quite a few current Radley boys on the call tonight, so really pleased about that. Now, I'm delighted to have old Radleian Nick Christie comparing this event today. He's going to introduce our speakers and oversee the Q&A session. But before I hand over to him, I'm going to just remind you of a few things. Please keep your microphones on mute. If you've got a question you want to ask during the talk, we'd really like it if you could put that on the Q&A function in the chat, and then Nick Christie will put that to the panelists at the end. This is your chance to grill the experts, so please feel free to put your questions on there. Also, this event will be recorded so that we can share it broadly with other people afterwards so that they can benefit from it too. Now I'm going to introduce you to Nick. Nick brings over 20 years of experience of selling into retailers and managing relationships with buyers. Now, as CEO of company Jump7, he's using his expertise and connections to support entrepreneurs who want to bring innovative products to market. Nick's worked with many companies who have appeared on the BBC programme Dragon's Den and has secured product sales into retailers worth millions of pounds, both in the UK and globally, including retailers such as John Lewis, QVC, Robert Dias and British Airways. Without further ado, over to you, Nick. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Caroline, and it's great to see so many people on the call today, and a special welcome to all the boys at college. It's great that you can join us. So I'll be introducing to the panel shortly, but I just thought I'd give a quick 2 minutes on why is entrepreneurism increasingly important in life, and also what you may be most interested in was what are the benefits for you. So in the wider sense, entrepreneurs create new businesses, often in the forms of new goods or services, which can result in new employment, which can stimulate and grow the economy and indeed generate new wealth. Entrepreneurs can create social change, breaking away from tradition and the norm, promoting innovation and innovative thinking. You can help improve people's quality of life. You can better human behavior or improve sustainability, for example, which is a hot topic right now. Now, importantly, especially if you're early in your career, you don't have to form your own company to be entrepreneurial. You could invest in new businesses. You can be an internal entrepreneur within an existing company or organization, bringing new ideas to them. Anywhere you work, I think innovative ideas and an entrepreneurial approach can only be a benefit for you and perhaps make you stand out from the crowd and be ripe for promotion or management. And if you want to run your own business, it doesn't have to be huge. It may well become huge, but it doesn't have to be. For example, small and medium-sized businesses in the UK account for an amazing 99.9% of the business population. So there were 5.6 million small and medium-sized companies at the start of last year. And of those, 1.4 million had employees and 4.2 million had no employees. It's a lot. So meaning 75% of businesses did not employ anyone apart from the owners, amazingly. So you can have perfectly successful businesses which are fairly small, and equally some are very large. Now, what about the personal benefits of being an entrepreneur for you? Now, there are lots of answers to this, but here are just a few that I can think of. Number one, of course, creating wealth for yourself and associated partners. 2, you can be in charge of your own work-life balance. Not always easy, mind, but you can be. 3, you can gain fantastic leadership experience. 4, you can work from anywhere or your chosen location, whether it's the ski slopes or your gym palace. 5, you can have company control and be your own boss. 6, I think this is an important one, you can build a great network. There's no such thing as knowing too many good people. And these are people you might be able to do business with, or that may be able to help you. And tonight's follow-on Radley event on April the 26th that Caroline mentioned at the beginning, that can of course help with that as well. 7, getting to learn new and interesting things in business is definitely a big part of it and is really fun to learn new things. 8, creating job opportunities for others. And finally, I think for me has been the most important one, setting up my own businesses, is personal pride, satisfaction, and a rewarding career. I'll just give one quick example. When I set up my previous company where we made our own consumer products, I made our first sell of a product into Marks and Spencer, which was for 50,000 units, and the order was worth £350,000 to our business, our little business. And when that order came in, and then when we saw the product on their shelves in their shops, it was a real sort of moment to see it all come together. Finally, before I introduce you to the stellar panel this evening, one final thing. I think very often people buy into their own ideas and interests the most. So if you can be entrepreneurial or involved in an area you find interesting or enjoyable, that can only help. Now, it's not always possible to do that, but it's something to keep in mind. Personally, I wanted to be manager of Aston Villa Football Club, but they turned down my application. But I'm passionate about innovative products and helping others in that arena. So I'm very happy running my own company in this area. Okay, so I'm now going to introduce the panel and ask them just to introduce themselves and maybe give a short description of their journey from leaving Radley to present day. If I could start with Sam. You're on mute, I think.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Oh, thank God for that. Good evening, everybody. Nick, thank you for that introduction. I think I left Radley in 2011. I then went to Durham University, had a really fantastic 3 years at Durham, reading politics, which I didn't end up going into. I left Durham and didn't really know what I wanted to do at all, in the sense that I'm not very financy. And so a lot of the traditional career paths of finance and consulting and accounting were not for me. So I thought I would try something totally different and maybe go into sort of a technology sphere. So I went and joined Amazon, and I worked for Amazon for a couple of years in their marketplace business, helping UK and European small businesses sell on Amazon and in the UK, Europe, and US. I then moved to the US and lived in New York, working for Fevertree, the drinks company, helping run their East Coast business for the tri-state area there, so New Jersey, Connecticut, and New York. Then COVID hit, and as I'll come on to later on, basically my visa was up in the air, job was in limbo, and then I came back to the UK and co-founded Allsam, which is a sort of 60-person company now, based in London, South Africa, and the Philippines, and we're currently in the process of raising our Series B fundraise at the moment. So yeah, a really exciting time ahead.
Great, thank you so much. Hugo, if you're ready to just give us a couple of minutes, that'd be great to.
Sure. So I'm Hugo. I've been in and around startups the last 6 years. I left Radley in 2015. I went to Exeter University, where I studied history and a bit of computer science, and I'm now working in a company called Cover, also started by an old Radleian, and I'm in a data and marketing role. And I've always sort of had this kind of entrepreneurial background. I've been working on side projects and small websites since I was about 16. And I'm now finally making the jump from working at a startup to starting a startup. Handed my notice in last Friday and going for it. So happy to chat a bit more about that.
Brilliant, thanks Hugo. And Rory, if you're ready to go.
Sure, thanks, Nick, and evening, everyone. So actually, we left Radley the same year as Sam's. That was 2011. I also went to Durham, and it was during my first year there that a friend and I came up with a business idea for a sports meetup app. And we built basically a minimal product of that with an agency in Newcastle. We raised like 150K angel round, took a year out of Durham to go to the States to essentially build a team and launch that in 2014-15, which is a really, really fun time being out there. But ultimately, we failed pretty badly. We didn't get traction for a number of reasons. So we laid off the team, came back to the UK. My co-founder went back to uni, and that's when I kind of more formally dropped out. And I basically kept going for another 3 years, still as part of that business, and kind of quite substantially iterated the product into a number of different, almost like sub-businesses. They were just like very different concepts. And then eventually closed that business down in 2018. And I freelanced for about a year before starting what I'm up to now at the tail end of 2019. So the business I now run is called Trust Keith. We help startup and scale up businesses become and stay data compliant. So think GDPR or ISO 27001. And we do that through a combination of our software platform and providing like a dedicated expert wrapped up as like a monthly subscription. And this time round, it's all bootstrap. So we haven't taken any external funding. It's all built off customer revenue. We're a team of 9. And yeah, it was a pretty niche industry, but that is just one of the lessons I took from what I was up to before that. And that's kind of my journey so far.
Great. We've all got some interesting company names we work for. Can I just ask why the name Trust Keith? It's an original one.
It's a Family Guy reference. So there's a scene when all the guys are basically breaking into this vault, and I get asked this in all our sales calls. And at the end, they get to this like final gate, and this like tannoy comes over, and it says, "What is the most unattractive male first name in the English language?" And it's Keith. And to me, that personified compliance and the stereotypes that go on in like data protection. So it's kind of like a riff on that, basically.
Very good, thank you. Okay, Alex, finally to you.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Caroline. Evening, everyone. And actually, I enjoyed that question as well, Nick. I was going to ask you that later on, Rory, myself. My story is that I left Radleian in 2010, went to university, read economics, and was always very keen to start my own business, and have been along the side, been very keen on sustainability. So when I met my co-founder in 2016, we were looking at various ways that we could upcycle fruit and veg that would otherwise go to waste. So across the Western world, a third, so 30% of fruit and veg doesn't end up on consumers' plates. And so we wanted to buy that fruit and veg from farmers and upcycle it into a product that would mean that it doesn't go to waste. We then looked into the beverage category full of sugary and artificially filled drinks, and created the UK's first soft drink that didn't have any sugar or sweetener, and at the same time infusing this fruit and veg that was surplus and rejected by the supermarkets. So that was started in 2017, 4.5 years on. Dash is now in 20 different countries worldwide. Last year we sold just over 10 million cans. This year we want to sell 20 million cans. And in the UK, retailers include Sainsbury's, Waitrose, Asda, Ocado, and in Europe, Deleuze supermarket, and Australia, Woolworths. We also locally manufacture in Australia as well as the UK, both using locally sourced fruit and veg that would otherwise go to waste. I think you'll probably be getting a similar theme throughout all the panelists this evening, that I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do post-uni. Everyone who I was connected with whilst reading economics was very keen to go into finance, and that wasn't quite for me. So it has been a very interesting journey, still going to university, reading economics, getting a bit of a background and understanding as to how business works, which has been helpful later on in life.
Good stuff. Can I just ask, you've gotten some fantastic retailers there. Was there one that was, if you like, once you got into that one, the others were more easy to get into?
I think it was incremental, and getting the first one, which was Selfridges. I remember, as you were talking about your story with your first retailer, having the cans on shelf for the first time in Selfridges was an amazing moment. But incrementally then going from Selfridges to then Boots was our big break, and then getting BP, and then rolling off all the other supermarkets. British Airways has been the one which is a great brand builder, because when you're on a plane, you'll never have more time when you're stuck there to look at the front of the pack, look at the back of the pack, read the story, and really try to understand the product. So that's been a retailer that's been very good for brand visibility.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you so much, guys. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions I'm going to throw around the panel, which we've already been discussing, but I can see some questions coming on the chat, which is fantastic. So we will go through them in about 15 minutes time. We've just had a few questions which we want to discuss. It's also fair to say that tonight, in a relatively short session, we can't discuss everything about the whole topic. So we try to focus on maybe some of the earlier stages of being an entrepreneur or setting up a business, or sort of feeling this way. So other things we would absolutely cover on the evening in April in more depth, and give a chance to ask further questions. But just wanted to ask the panel if we can try and keep it relatively brief. The first question, which is kind of, what was your trigger to want to be more entrepreneurial, or to want to set up a new business? Hugo, do you want to maybe, you've got something more recent that's happening that you might want to sort of may or may not want to mention, but I'll ask you that first of all.
Yeah, sure. So it started when I was about 16. I think it was Ian Yorston, Mr. Yorston, was taking our ICT classes, and he was saying, like, this internet thing is going to be big. Web 2, anything with social networks involved is going to be a big thing. So I started trying to learn how to build websites. And back in the day, you used to have to pay website hosting costs. They were really expensive for a 16-year-old kid. They were like £15 a month. So then I quickly looked at it, like, how could I make money from this? And I kind of enjoyed building websites, kind of enjoyed like that foray into technology. And then increasingly just like got stuck into tech, and started looking at developing a skill set there, which was loosely sort of the intersection between building technology websites and also actually like being a bit more commercial with this. From there, I ended up working at another Radleian startup, a guy called Ben Lambert. He was working on a dating app called Clocked. Very novel concept in 2016. This was just as Tinder was coming to its height. And it was just like such a cool environment. There were ping pong tables everywhere. It was so un-Radley, the whole thing. And it was fantastic just to like break into this new scene. And for me, that was just like the catalyst of, there's this whole new world out there. I love building things. So let's give this a crack and try and get involved in that ecosystem a bit more.
Good for you. Well done. Sam, and what was your sort of trigger point for doing your own business?
So I genuinely have always wanted to do my own thing. My friends, some of whom are on this call, will kind of testify. I've had many ideas, many of them rubbish, but all learned a lot in the process. My brother works in startups, works called Cedars, and my dad is really entrepreneurial as well. But I think that my first foray, I guess, taste of kind of what it is to be an entrepreneur was probably when I was at Amazon. I started a side business there, an e-commerce business. So I went to China, saw some products, met factories, negotiated, buying a product, importing it, launching in the US, Europe. That business in 2020 did over $1 million. So it was the first time I said, you hit that million turnover, and it's a really amazing feeling. I sold that business in the summer of 2019, so too early. But again, that's a separate point. And then I moved to the US, and really the forcing function was I was having an amazing time working for Fever Tree, and was loving New York. And then COVID hit the States really badly, and I found myself sitting in this tiny apartment in New York, paying ridiculous rents. What was a really fun time actually was really quite not fun at all. My visa was in limbo, my job had completely changed. So essentially, my idea actually is not as, I saw my business model being executed really well in the US, and I thought I have the perfect skill set to do this, but I have no idea how to raise money, and I need someone who has very different skills to mine. So I was kind of put in a position where it really was, let's give this a go. And if it doesn't work, I can go back to another job. So I flew back to the UK, and that's where I started it with my brother. More on that later on as to if that's a good idea or not. It is.
Good stuff. It's interesting to hear. I mean, all of us probably have had different jobs. We haven't just had one. I also didn't have a clue what I wanted to do when I left Bristol University. So sometimes and some people have failures and then successes. You watch most of the Dragons and Dragons Den, nearly all of them have had sort of failed business, and then they get a success somewhere. So we shouldn't be put off, and it's a learning experience. Okay, Rory, could you maybe just talk about your sort of trigger point for doing your own thing?
I think it was definitely like growing up, I was always kind of like building things and trying to sort of flog those and things like that. So I had a bit of a seed then. I think at prep school, I used to kind of hand make these top trump cards and kind of sell those kind of thing. And then it kind of went dormant. And then it wasn't until being at uni and kind of ideating with a friend that I thought, actually, no, I really like building things on it. You know, that idea of taking an idea, building, I guess, a brand around it and getting that first bit of revenue. And it was that kind of excitement, I guess. And that was initially why with the first business, I think I followed much more of like a passion business, like skiing and things like that, like being a consumer product as well. And I got a bit burnt like that. And then that's why this time round, I guess I was a lot more intentional about what kind of business I wanted to start, i.e. like B2B in the compliance space with a lot of validation. People have to be spending money and like things like that. And I think as well, having that intervening period where I was working for other people, that also kind of reminded me that, no, I don't want to work for someone else. I want to have that control. I want to sort of know that if I'm going to work really hard, that I'm going to get something out of it. And it sort of was that kind of full cycle. And I guess that drives a lot of what I'm doing now, which is the control, being able to build something that's like to my vision and, you know, that sort of things.
You've got control. Brilliant. And finally, Alex?
For me, the trigger was always being passionate about sustainability and trying to do things in a better way. So using this fruit and veg that we would buy from farmers to prevent it go to waste, that was the trigger for creating the concept for Dash. Now we continue to try to innovate what we do as a business and make sure that we are really the leading business in sustainability. So to name 3 ways that we do that, Dash is a B Corp, and a B Corp brand is one that is certified by B Corp for having the highest form of environmental standards and environmental transparency. The second thing is that we obviously exclusively buy surplus fruit and veg from farms that's rejected by the supermarkets. And the third thing is that we measure our carbon output. And so Dash has got the lowest recorded carbon output of any soft drink globally at 110 grams of CO2 per can. And that's something that we're looking to decrease as much as we can over time in order to become carbon negative. So it's really coming from the standpoint of looking at doing something better than it has been done before. And luckily, the soft drink category was pretty ripe for disruption.
And that's a really good answer, yeah. And hopefully with the world trying to be a bit more sustainable, it's a well-placed, well-timed business to do that. Okay, thank you, guys. Some good questions coming on the chat. Keep them up. Second question, and I think this is really, really important, and it's a difficult one, and it's hinted at in one of the questions, is what are the best steps you can take to validate your business idea? So you may think it's a great idea, but how do I, maybe without having to give it all away, how do I validate that, understand whether it really is going to be a hit, people would want that service or goods, that kind of thing. Rory, do you want to have a quick answer on that?
So sort of what best steps to validate a business?
Yes.
I think what's interesting with that, because I speak to quite a few people who have like an idea and that's what do I do now? And it's actually trying to shift the logic a little bit to think, why wouldn't it work? Because ultimately, once you have an idea you want to run with, you're about to like invest a lot of your time and also potentially your money and maybe other people's as well. So it's really important to actually be really certain that this is the right thing, because particularly that phase where it's really exciting, you just want to hurry up and take something to market, and it's important to understand whether it has legs or not. So with that in mind, it's then doing like speaking to customers. There's a book out there called The Mum Test, which is very much about sort of asking non-leading questions, and that's a big part of it. And beyond that, I think it's really about creating a pitch for your idea really without spending any money and then trying to sell it. You don't have to worry about how you're going to deliver it until you have a contract signed. And then you can iterate that pitch really cheaply because it's essentially either a landing page or even just like a PDF. And that's what I did with this business. I went around pretending it was live, trying to sell it, got the first contract signed, and then was like, okay, right now we're going to figure out how we're going to do this. And so you can do that, you know, really with no money at all. And just be led by people who are actually going to pay you, and not those sort of researchers who are like, yeah, sure, I'd give it a go. Let me know when it's live. You can get a contract signed or a letter of intent signed, even at that idea phase. And you can be a bit generous about how advanced you are at that time. And then you can whip up the real solution in time.
Good stuff. Any other guys do put your hands up if you want to answer that question? Okay, Alex?
I think the validation for us came from putting the product out there and testing it on real live people. How did that come across? We popped up a table, and before we had any of our finished products, we just chopped up fruit and veg, put it through a soda stream, carbonated the water, and said to passers-by in parks around London, here, have a try of this liquid. What do you think of the taste? Would you give up your usual sugary drinks for this? Some told us to get lost. Some told us this tastes absolutely delicious. And it was more a gradual, iterative approach where we then developed the flavors weekend on weekend in these parks around London. Then once we had formed more of an idea of the product that we wanted to create, so for example, we originally didn't think that people would really care about our use of infusing surplus fruit and veg, but the more feedback that we got, people thought this was a really important element to Dash, and more so than not having any sugar or sweetener in the product. And so with that, we then developed the hierarchy of the messaging of our USPs, and put that more to the forefront. And then we pitched to Virgin Startup, which is an incubator from Virgin Group, and they give a little bit of cash as a zero interest loan, but they also give a great mentor as well, which I'm sure we'll come on to later. So forming the idea, putting it out there, iterating as you go along, and then improving it bit by bit. There's a very good book which Eric Ries wrote called The Lean Startup, and using that model to continue to try to improve it, and then putting it out to the world, and then surrounding ourselves with great people.
Thank you, Alex. I think linked to that, we'll sort of keep going with some other questions. Linked to that a little bit maybe is taking advice. We've got about 100 people on the call today, and some could absolutely give advice to others. Taking advice when you're starting a new business or having an idea or being innovative, I think, is important. And I think all of us on the call, or the panelists, have had some kind of mentor or coach or do ongoing. I personally went to get advice. My tip is maybe not go to a direct family member because they might give biased opinions that you want to hear. And we talked about leading questions earlier, and that can happen as well. So I went to someone who'd been successful and had a really good chat with them just before setting up my business. But Sam, did you have a business mentor? Do you have a sort of coach or anything like that?
Do you know what? I actually just do. Ollie and I do have one just now, and it feels quite American. It feels like sort of I'm going to them with my problem, well, not problems, but with my ideas and feelings, and looking for guidance. And actually, it's been one of the best things I think we've invested in. For that reason, you said it is a neutral sounding board. I call it like a business mum or dad. It's someone who isn't a friend or close relationships, who doesn't have a vested interest in your in your specific business and what direction you should take. And they've been absolutely amazing in helping us through extremely challenging HR situations, business situations. So yeah, I think it's been a great decision to invest in that.
That's really interesting. I know quite a lot of people at CEO level, and nearly all the best ones continue to have some kind of business or life coach, even if they're uber successful already. So it's not something to be ashamed of by any means. It can only be helped. And I think the word sounding board is a really good one there, someone independent. Rory, do you want anything to say, or Hugo or Alex?
Yeah, I think I've been working with a coach for the last like 2.5 years, and we catch up weekly. And it's like accountability can't be underestimated. But I also think starting out, you've got a great opportunity to be really intentional about whose support you want. You can go and find someone who's literally running the business that you want to be running one day, or living that life, and get their input, and they can tell you exactly how they did it. So it's been really important to me.
I'm going to add a slightly contrarian point of view to this. So I think mentorship and coaching are great. I think you should be wary of a lot of advice out there. Often it's completely overinflated and it's based off too small and meaningless data set. So you see people without really any area of expertise in your business, and you've got to kind of take it with a pinch of salt. Like fundamentally, your users should be the kind of focal point for what their problems are, and direct your intention as to whether you think there's demand or a problem that's been waiting there to be solved. So yeah, there's obviously great advice out there. People can help you with fundraising and mentorship and coaching, but just be careful as to what the advice you're seeking is. If it's around the customer problem, they're not a customer. Just ignore it. Talk to your customers. But if it's about other things, I think there's a very strong place for that, as the other two mentioned.
Good stuff. Thank you. Whilst you're there, Hugo, there was one question which I thought you were well placed to answer. With possibly you're slightly younger than the people like old farts like myself. Is that thoughts on doing learning programs, mentorships, accelerator programs to help further your knowledge?
Sure. So there's a huge amount out there from university level stuff. There are various different entrepreneurial societies and like clubs, like those things you should get involved with if you can. Just get familiar with the people there, see what people are working on. As you're a bit further down the line, if you're looking to start a company, there are loads of early stage accelerators. I'm joining one in a couple of months. They're going to give me a tiny bit of funding, and that will give me the space to come develop some ideas. And then adding to that, I think they're like, look at this cool. I'm on a panelist with 4 incredibly interesting and like exciting entrepreneurs. Like, go reach out to every single person on this panel and see if they can help you in some capacity. And likewise, like the Radleian network is just full of the most fascinating people. Like really lean into that and see what you can get, because people are happy to help, and it makes a huge difference.
Great answer. Thank you so much. I was wondering, Caroline, or any of the staff from Radleian, is there a sixth form club or any teachers there who can be a sounding board for this sort of thing early in this? I'm sure there are things at university you can do, but I was wondering, is there anything at Radleian at the moment?
I think there is an entrepreneurs society, and then in the sixth form, I think, and fifth form, there's opportunities to do things like the business game, and where you can start to generate business ideas. It's all sort of focused on helping to kind of think more broadly further than university, and what other opportunities that you can take on. So definitely there's opportunities for boys who are interested, and there are individuals to go to at Radleian.
Good stuff. Thank you. Okay, last question before we move on to the chat is it's potentially quite a big topic, and one we could cover on the evening more, but it's hinted at in a couple of questions coming on the chat as well already. And I found it myself is, what do you need to do to get started with a new business? What are the priorities? One quick tip from me I found is, if you looked at the whole project as one big sort of thing or blancmange, there's so much to do, and where do I start and what's important? And I found it really useful to put flags in the sand, do priorities. What can I be doing now in the short term? What can I do in the medium term? Just sort of, and sometimes it's nice just to tick things off a list, if you like, to achieve certain things. Otherwise, the whole thing in one is almost too big to digest. So set little targets and flags in the sand can be quite helpful. Alex, do you have any sort of thoughts on priorities when you want to start a new business? There's so much you could do, but
I think that I would make sure that you prioritize something that you are really interested in doing and you're passionate about. I think that if you choose something that you're not passionate about, starting a business is pretty tricky, and you end up working very long hours each day. And if you don't love what you're doing, then it's going to make it even harder. So find something first and foremost that you're really passionate about and that you want to change for the better. And then I would have a long distance North Star that you want to try and achieve? What's the end goal that you want to try and achieve, and then work back from there. And as you say, Nick, try and make things into achievable milestones along the way, but still trying to aim for that North Star where you want to end up.
That's a great way of putting it. Thank you. Anyone else put their hands up for that one? Yeah, sure. Sam. Thank you.
So again, this is just my own personal view. I don't know if the other panelists would agree or disagree, but the first thing I'd say you need to get started is find an amazing co-founder who shares your passion for a variety of reasons. The first reason is, and Alex touched upon it, like starting a business is super hard. It is, I can't stress enough how hard it is. And I would use profanity to emphasize that, but it's not the right form to, but it is really difficult. So to have a co-founder next to you to go through those highs and lows, I have found to be like absolutely essential. And that's hard to find someone who has different skill sets to you do and who shares the same passion as you do and loves the thing you want to achieve as much as you do. It's not easy. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I say is find a business that kind of has achieved what you intend to achieve in a couple of years' time or a year's time, because it's proof of concept. And proof of concept, I have found, is an amazing way of proving to yourself that it is possible because they've done it. And at really challenging times, I found it's amazing to just think, well, we know we can get through this because other company has done it. And then I think the final thing is when you lie in bed at night, I found I had old Sam in my head of this so many things going on, and old Sam is this, that, and it was so many different things. And what I would say is just really boil your business right down to like an MVP, the minimum viable product. Like what is the minimum possible product you could go to market with? Focus on that and run it at 1,000 miles per hour. So that doesn't mean, you've got you have a job maybe, but then in the evenings, you must spend all your evenings on this business idea. If you're fortunate enough, quit your job and go into this focus on this business idea. It can't be a side hustle for too long, because what I found is you eventually could let it drag on and on and on and on. And there'll always be a reason why you don't want it, why you can't do this, your idea. So run it at 1,000 miles per hour, at least. And if it doesn't work, you gave it your best shot.
Thank you. That's a fantastic answer. Okay, I think we're going to move to the questions on the chat board, and do keep them coming on. I go from the top. Hands up from the panelists if you want to have a crack at answering. Quite an interesting one to start off. From Elizabeth is, what is your greatest lesson so far? Anyone's free to answer. Just maybe a key lesson you've learned on your journey. Okay, Alex, thank you.
I think surround yourselves with the best possible people in order to complete your mission. So both in terms of the employees, to try and surround yourself with people that are always better than you. Always try and employ someone that firstly has slightly different ideas to yourself, in order to make sure there's not all homogeneous ideas that are coming through, and there is a bit of differentiation, which helps creativity, but always employing people that are better than you as well, to raise the standards. Second thing is to get investors around you and mentors that are best in class. So some of the investors that we've got include James Watt, who started the brewery Brewdog. Also people like Sam Goolsworthy in Fairfax Hall, who started Sipsmith Gin. One of the old marketing directors at Innocent, a guy called Dan Germain. And various other people along the way. These guys are best in class at, when we have a question that needs answering, who's the best distributor in another market, then we speak with James Watt. If we want to talk about marketing, then it's the Innocent guy, Dan Germain. So making sure that you have people that you can lean on for the various different scenarios that you'll come up against, because there are always loads of unpredictable questions that one might have, and you don't have the experience with answering it or going through it before.
Brilliant. And I've always actually found that we can't all individually know everything. So there's plenty of people you get external help from, and don't be afraid to ask. A lot of people like helping people. Anyone else want to raise a point with a great lesson they've learned so far on their journey? Okay, Roy, thank you.
That one. I think separate to that, another one is just about being really intentional. And I think particularly at the outset, it's being really intentional about like, what do you want out of it? In terms of, what kind of business do you want to build? What kind of industry do you want to be in? Do you want co-founders? Like, what is the outcome you're working back from? Because that is then a lens to basically view everything, particularly when it comes to hiring or the type of product you're building or the markets you're in. And just having that at the outside, particularly as things start getting so full on, whether that's customers or hiring, and there's always going to be so much going on. And you've got a really clear outcome about what you want from it, then you can sort of hold fast on that and get that outcome.
Brilliant, thank you. So I think a gentleman called Nick's asked the question, how do you approach the challenge of recruiting the right people in a small business, which can be absolutely critical? Someone's also said it's critical they fit into the entrepreneurial culture. Sam, have you got any thoughts on how best to recruit the best people for your business?
Yeah, I can share experience because I've also got it very wrong. So what I've learned from when I get it right is when Ollie and I have chosen right. This is especially true for our management team, which, as Alex touched upon it, they are just so much smarter than I am, and I sit there just amazed about the insights that they're drawing from the meeting. But I think it's about really having a really robust interview process. And by that, I mean, the first thing is, we have a cultural fit interview. Like, what is a cultural fit? And really what it means is, like, can I sit next to this person every day and work really well with them, share insights with them, challenge each other fairly, and generally get on with them? Do we share the same integral fundamental values? And if you do, that's the most important thing, because I often find they're the hardest to coach them, or at least or someone to gain. And then I think, second to that, it really is about the skills that they have, and it's about being very honest about the skills that you do not have, and do they offer those skills in return? And I think that's something that over time you can do, ways of interviewing for that. But I think that those are the two key things, that personality point, and do you share the same values as that person, is absolutely essential. And when it's gone really horrifically wrong is when we haven't interviewed hard enough on the values that we have consequently found to be very dear to us. And that's just because we're a very young startup, and these things evolve over time. So
that's fantastic. Anyone got any thoughts on actually not just the right people, but how to attract them? What you can shout about your business, what make you look more attractive than another job offer? I'll give you one stupid funny example, but my brother, who's got a business building apps and stuff like that, he's recruiting young guys, to tech savvy guys, and he just got some silly things to make it more attractive. So on a World Cup football day, they'll all go down to the pub and watch the game, no problem. He's even got something called a posh bog roll guarantee. So he guarantees in the office you will get Andrex loo paper rather than the tracing paper-like stuff you had in D-Social in 1990. So, but you could have silly things and really important things, but I think there's some good candidates out there. Alex, you had an idea about appealing to good candidates.
Yeah, it's something that was quite live for us. We just hired our first employee internationally in Australia. And it was much harder finding someone who was outstanding in Australia, where the Dash brand wasn't very well known. And so we had to spend about double the amount of time finding someone that was absolutely brilliant, because people didn't understand the products, and then also the brand recognition wasn't there. In the UK, we find it a lot easier now than we used to find amazing people. I think that making sure that the fundamentals of everybody putting in the same direction for a business is really important. So something that we do with our employees is we have a share option pool, which means that if employees are at the business for a good amount of time, and also they hit both their personal and the company hits its overall targets, then everyone is rewarded with share options. That means that everyone is really singing off the same hymn sheet, and feels motivated to work for the overall business, as opposed to just hitting their overall, their personal KPI and targets.
Shared recognition and reward is really nice. Yeah, good stuff. Thank you. we've got a couple of questions from someone. I know just do one of them, if that's okay. Again, quite a big topic, but do put your hands up if you want to answer. After setting up, this is the question, I understand the biggest challenges to business is marketing. Many techniques online are being talked about, such as SEOs, growth hacking, AdSense, email marketing. Of course, we've got social media as well. What marketing techniques did you use that worked for your startups? Anyone want to have any thoughts on that? Or any thoughts on social media? Obviously,
yeah. I think Nico, so obviously, Old Sam owns and acquires multiple e-commerce businesses across all types of categories, fitness, DIY and tools, home, all kinds. And so with that in mind, we adopt every marketing strategy under the sun really appropriate for the customer. So I think what I would say is that that there are some that work much better than others depending on the brand. I think for the fitness businesses we have under ownership, building that community and building that fostering that community is really important. So that is email marketing. It's a ton of marketing on paid social. It's actually doing quite a lot of live commerce we're trying now, so actually really promoting our products live with influencers on paid social channels, which is totally new to us. I don't know much about growth hacking, so I can't comment on that. But obviously, the obvious ones are then obviously Google SEO is obviously a very important one, not just for our brands but for our website. But yeah, I think that the unique one that we're using now is on paid social, which I'm sure most people on this call probably interact with those ads.
Thank you. Okay, maybe one for Hugo, or anyone else who wants to raise their hand as well. What do you think is one of the most important skills you need now or will need in the coming years? Or attitude, or maybe?
It's tough. There's so you can do. It's like, just if you do something really, really well, that's probably more important than a specific skill. So going really deep into a topic you care about, similar to what Rory was talking about, just like intention in that topic. So like, as a very wacky example, I saw this TikTok guy that is a TikToker on train spotting, and he's just signed a deal with Gucci for like many millions of pounds. And you've looked at something that is just so niche, and he's kind of managed to extrapolate that to something so much broader. Like, I could never sit here and say, yeah, you should get into train spotting. It would just be wrong to put it that way. So follow what you care about, get really good at something, and then just be intentional about where you take it and have that initiative and the gumption to go out and do something. And I think that's probably the best starting point in this stage.
Thank you. Great answer. Anyone else want to go on that one? If not, we will move on to a really interesting question from William, which is maybe when it's challenging. So the question is tied to the question of validating your business idea. And William asks, or says, all the sporting, business, and inspirational speaker success stories push hard on the premise of never give up. If you're starting a new business and you've been successful in raising funding throughout multiple rounds, but you're just not getting consumer traction, at some point you presumably need to make a decision to do more than change direction and pull the plug. Do you have any thoughts on how to handle that decision making, or maybe when it's not going well, do we pull the plug? Maybe it's setting targets, or sure, Rory, thank you.
I think this one kind of resonates with me quite a bit. So that I mentioned before that I had the initial business idea I went to the States with, and then we came back, and essentially it was me leading the company for like 3 years, ultimately iterating into very different businesses. You know, at one point we were a white label music streaming service, and we were pitching to Virgin and giffgaff to try and create their own pay-as-you-go music streaming service. And then towards the end, we were a customer success rewards business. And I think that element of like when to give up is tricky, particularly when you've got that run rate, particularly if you have, like, even if it's dwindling, if you've still got money in the bank, there's always that sense that I'll give it one more quarter, I'll give it one more month. It's always going to feel like that. And I think it's really important to kind of take your head out of the sand and just really honestly evaluate your progress in terms of like, are we actually making progress, or is this, am I not being productive at this point? And in my case, I had a friend who ultimately, and he's been pretty successful in business. He kind of said to me, right, Rory, this is your MRR, your monthly recurring revenue target. If you don't hit that by this date, then you've got to kind of call it quits. And I had that plus a combination of just dwindling funding in the bank that kind of brought it to a natural conclusion. But I think, again, it's about just being intentional. You know what success looks like don't kid yourself. And it's hard because, particularly me, I was like 4 years in, and there's that sunk cost fallacy. Like, I have a friend who's running a software company. They're now like 16 years old, and they've really flatlined for the last like 6 years. Like, it's always going to feel like, let's do it again. And at some point, with outside input, I think you can kind of make that decision, but it's not easy at all. But knowing that, you can go again. It's only failure if you give up on trying, not necessarily giving up or concluding that business, because you can start again. But it's really tough. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. We're going to have one final question, which may be relevant to some people. Max has asked, maybe Alex. One of the challenges this person has come up against is accessing markets and timing that well. So the question is, how or when do you decide to broaden outside of maybe your home or initial market? So maybe presuming you were UK to start with, Alex, and when to broaden that outside of the UK?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to make sure that there is laser focused on really trying to nail one's initial market first before looking to move on. I think many businesses fail because they try and spread themselves too thin. So I wouldn't get overawed by the potential prize of moving quickly into international markets too soon, because it might jeopardize one's position in their existing market. So if I look at another challenger brand that's in our category of infused waters, they tried to go over to the US too quickly and split the funds that they raised between the UK and the US, and it's meant that they've done badly in both markets because they haven't put all their resources into the UK, where they didn't have a strong foundation already. So once you've established dominance in one's home market, then looking abroad is a good idea. Looking firstly into market trends. So if I use Australia as the example for Dash and why we launched there, sustainability and health and wellness per capita is both really big in Australia. We then had some really good investors who are based in Australia that own a distribution company, own a grocery sales agency, another one that runs a soft drink business that knows a lot of manufacturers. So then having the foundations of how you'd set up the business internationally and make sure that that it's going to work economically there. And then thirdly, making sure that the market is scalable and you're able to really add incremental revenue to your existing market. So it's not going to be a market that is relatively small, doesn't have the right macro trends going in that direction for your product. It's one that really will perform nicely and add good growth to business.
Brilliant, Alex. Thank you so much. That's a really useful answer. Okay, guys, I think time is against us and we've had some fantastic answers. There's a lot more we can go through in April together, but I want to thank on all of our behalves, Sam, Hugo, Rory and Alex. Thank you so much for your time and thank you everyone for listening. I'm now going to hand back to Caroline to finish up.
Brilliant, Nick, and a massive thanks to you and thanks again to all the panelists. It's been absolutely brilliant, really good flavour for what is going to come at the April event. So thank you very, very much. Now, before you all go, a couple of things. Firstly, a reminder, and then secondly, an opportunity for the budding entrepreneurs amongst you. So this event is, to remind you, is the beginning of an ongoing focus from us on entrepreneurism. So there'll be further events in April this year, but then also at the end of the year in November as well. So plenty more opportunities to network and talk to each other and find out more stories from people like Rory, Hugo, Alex and Sam. So we've also got an entrepreneurs group on Radley Connect called Radley Connect, our digital networking platform. There's a group on there which I urge you to connect with, because there are other entrepreneurs in the Radley network beyond the people on this call who I'm sure you can get a great amount of value from talking to. Now, before I let you go, I'm briefly going to hand you over to old Radleian Harry Eady, who's going to talk about an exciting opportunity that he is offering for enterprising young ORs. Harry, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yeah. Hi.
Brilliant. Thank
Hi.
you. If you could just tell the assembled group briefly about your opportunity.
Yeah, sure. Of course. Yeah, so hi, I'm Harry. I left Radley about 6 years ago. I did a degree in business and management. I've always kind of enjoyed aspects of entrepreneurialism. And so I then applied for a job at Invest UK. And Invest UK is centered really around FDI and foreign entrepreneurs and helping them set up a business in the UK. And within the group, I'm part of the academy. And what we do at the academy is we offer a 12-week program to aspiring entrepreneurs, equipping them with kind of, the knowledge and skills that they will really need to transform an innovative idea into a successful business and kind of kickstart their entrepreneurial journey. The course is delivered by industry experts who lead a number of workshops for over an 8-week period, from developing their business model to creating a pitch to finding the right startup team. And then it's followed by a 4-week internship or work experience at a UK SME to kind of really apply what they've learned and experience it all firsthand. Whilst we do work quite a lot at the moment with international entrepreneurs, we're really looking to branch that out to those who would like to start up a business as well in the UK. The programme does kind of cost around £10,000, but what we'd really like to do is offer up to 3 students, past or present, that are on this call, who are looking to set up a business of their own, a bursary. So what we will be doing is hosting an online competition for applicants, with the winner or winners to be announced at the event in April. The entry criteria, I believe, will be published via Caroline after this event. So if you are interested, then please do look out for that. Thank you very much. It's been very interesting.
Brilliant. Thanks, Harry. Alex McCulloch, you've got your hand up. Did you want to ask a question? No, possible accidental hand up. Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. More details to follow about the event and about the bursaries that was just mentioned. One final thing for me, we have a big thinking talk next week where we have Catherine Garrett-Cox, who's going to talk about companies of the future. So please do register for that, because there'll be more fascinating insights from her. Thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you at the event in April in person. That would be lovely, wouldn't it? Thank you very much. And thanks to all. Thanks to our panelists.